Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Brian from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Security Squawk podcast. I'm Brian here with Andre and Randy. What's up, guys? How are you today?
Oh, sunny Tuesday afternoon here in South Florida.
Man, sunny, huh? We're getting rain, so we needed rain. It's been raining for about a week here, off and on. We need it.
I love how you guys default right to the weather.
I know. That's what I was chuckling about.
All right, guys, we got a bunch of stuff going on this week. Federal government just announced it fined 4 healthcare companies for getting hit with ransomware. And it's every single case, the reason they got hit was the same preventable failure they've been warned about for years. Welcome to Security Squawk, Business Cybersecurity. I'm Brian Horning, joined as always by Randy and Andre. We've got a loaded episode today, guys. 3 stories that are going to hit close to home for a lot of business owners. And what I want to tell you before we dig in, Randy or Andre kicking us off with a story about the federal government settling 4 ransomware investigations under HIPAA, the healthcare privacy law that our federal government passed many years ago that people don't think have any teeth. Well, we're going to find out today that might not be the case anymore and what's going on around that. And they found, and Andre's going to let us know, that one thing that they found in all 4 cases, and it's probably something that, that every business or every healthcare business, needs to hear, because it's probably something that you need to figure out if you have going on in your healthcare organization. Randy's going to bring us this Instructure story. And that's this company behind Canvas, right? The learning platform your kid's school probably uses. And a hacking group has claimed that they stole about 275 million records from 9,000 schools. Sounds familiar. I think we did a story like this around this time last year with a bunch of schools having a problem with their cloud provider, right? So, and I'm going to close out the show with a story that I've been watching for a while now. And this organization, TSYS or TSYS, one of the largest payment processors in the country, just got hit by ransomware again. And the people who predicted it back in 2020 have been proven completely right. So we'll dig into it. So Andre, this one's yours. You're going to set it up first for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning again. So what we have here is, as you mentioned, right? A lot of times people are saying HIPAA has no teeth, but here we see that the HIPAA does have some teeth, and it's coming after 4 of these businesses, specifically Regional Women's Health Group, Assured Imaging, Star Group Health, and Consulate Health. And as Brian, you mentioned, one of the things that they all had in common, all of the 4 companies had in common, was that they didn't conduct a proper risk analysis. So they weren't necessarily getting fined for getting ransomware. It was just because they weren't doing the proper things before. And I think that's an interesting comment, because let's just say you were doing all of the proper things and you still got attacked. Based on how this article is kind of wording it, HIPAA is basically saying, well, that's one thing, but the fact that you weren't doing any of this is why we're specifically finding you. And it's the same story. Highly sensitive information was compromised, social security numbers, financial and banking information, and being that these are health, we talk about medical records, medications, lab results, and so forth. So the total was $1.16 million, and that's basically between all 4 of them. But then there's still the lawsuits that's going to be coming. There's still the trust in the clients or patients that these firms were using, and also they now have to report back to HIPAA for a period of a few years. And the recommendations that HIPAA wants to see in the future is that they need to know where the sensitive data lives and flows, and that's very important because a lot of times once you know where that information is, then that's how you can protect it. But if it's in the wild, wild west and it's in some people's OneDrive and someone has a Mac and they think that's protected, so they don't need any, security, it's on there. There is also encryption that they want to start to see what these companies to do, training employees on security practices, and implementing audit controls and monitoring. So these companies were not doing that, and this is now what HIPAA wants to see going forward. So this is a big takeaway that if you are within their governance and compliance, this is something that if you're at least doing it, you're going to be one step ahead, where if there was ever a attack, you will at least know where this information is and you can be proactive about it.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting to me that they keep finding. OCR has completed 19 ransomware investigations at this point, 19, and every single one, they keep finding the same thing, that there's no adequate risk analysis on these organizations. So there's literally a direct correlation between inadequate or no risk analysis and these companies getting hit with ransomware and then subsequently paying a fine on top of the breach. And the double hit is that part that isn't sinking in with a certain sector of the healthcare world that isn't doing this stuff the right way, right? They're not understanding that it's not just a battle against a ransomware and ransomware payment or whatever. It's all these other things, right, that we talk about on the show all the time. Now we're seeing HIPAA start to actually do their job and enforce these things when they happen. But you also have class action lawsuits and other things that come about as part of this double hit that happens to businesses when they don't pay attention to this stuff.
Yeah. So, good points, y'all. And, I've been saying the last couple of months, at least since probably the beginning of the year, that data is now going to be organizations, businesses, nonprofits, whatever. Their data is quickly becoming one of their biggest liabilities. And this is a perfect example of why. And, we all know, the three of us, how many doctors or dentists have we talked to? Can we even number the number? How many have we talked to that have said, "Oh, don't bring up HIPAA. They don't enforce that." Man, it's like a broken record. And what I really like about this, if you can like something about a fine, is the fact that they said you didn't do the risk analysis, and that's what we're fining you for. Guys, y'all know this. Our audience ought to know this, but in case someone doesn't know this, a cybersecurity attack is inevitable. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I always say this, it's like living down on the coast in Texas. You're going to have a hurricane eventually. So you got to have a plan for when you have a hurricane. You're going to have a cyber attack. You're going to have probably multiple. At this point, they're pretty much nonstop. And what are you going to do when the guys get in? I don't know if I can say that. That doesn't sound right. But I really like how they started this off, this fine, by saying you didn't do the risk analysis. Because what would the risk analysis have shown? It would have shown that you don't have anything going on to limit the blast radius. We're going to see that in when I do my segment, how much it's terabytes of data got out. So they didn't have anything in there to limit the blast radius. The risk analysis would have shown, hey, you're doing this risky. Your help desk this way is risky. Your data, you don't have good backups, this, that. That's everything that a risk analysis shows. And they didn't do it. So crazy times. And that's a great article to bring up, Andre. and hopefully we'll see some change in this sector of our economy.
Yeah, and just one quick statistic. So the OCR, according to AI, they only have a few hundred employees that specifically deal with these type of investigations. So we're talking about millions of healthcare providers, insurers, and all of these different hospitals, and there's only about a few hundred that are in charge. So they're not going. Obviously, they're never going to catch everyone, but when they do, catch you, they're going to make sure they make an example out of you.
There's a couple of things I would kind of highlight before we move on to Randy's topic, but one of these 4 settlements that should keep people up at night is this Consociate Health. I don't know if you saw the details of this one as you were going through the material for today, Andre, Randy, and Andre, you're usually pretty good at pointing these ones out, but a phishing attack at this company gave attackers initial access in July of 2020. The attackers didn't deploy ransomware until November and December of 2021. So they're in there for a year and 16 months, right? 16 months, someone's sitting inside your network, reading your files, mapping your systems, waiting for the right moment. And you had absolutely no idea they were there, right? So like, this is what these risk assessments will highlight. It's like, if you have somebody come in, and that's when these auditors and people can come in after the fact and say, you didn't even have a risk analysis done. Because like, when you start talking to business owners and they don't know things like incident response, terms like SOC, these are tools and systems that can help these organizations detect these things. So somebody's not sitting around in your network for 16 months, right? So it all starts with that risk assessment. What don't you have that you probably need so you don't end up like these businesses, right? So you have to have a way to detect that. And most businesses don't have a way to detect whether somebody's in their network like this, right? Most businesses have no one watching their network at that level, and that's a problem. So, and then the last thing before we move on, that I think, Andre, you said it, but a lot of people, when they hear HIPAA, they think healthcare, hospital problem. But the STAR Group is another organization that got fined, and they're a self-funded employer health plan. And that means the business that runs a self-insured employee health benefits plan is a HIPAA covered entity. And there's a lot of HIPAA covered entities out there that don't do healthcare, right? Like, we have a law firm that's a HIPAA covered entity because they do medical malpractice defense, right? So they're dealing with healthcare records all the time when they're defending the doctors, right? So you have to understand, if you deal with these things, if you sign a BAA or if you didn't, right? It matters, right? Because we talk to companies all the time, and it's like, well, we never, because they never signed a BAA with anyone, or no one ever made them sign one. They don't think they're covered under HIPAA, but when you see what they actually have stored on their network, it tells a different story, right? And we see that all the time, where organizations either pretend like they don't have these compliance, situations on their hand, or they just don't know. They seriously are ignorant about it. In a lot of cases, people know, they just don't want to invest the time and money and what it takes to secure this stuff the proper way. So they just leave it out there. That's what I see. I don't know if you guys see it any different. Nope.
That's pretty much what I would say.
Yep. Good. Okay.
No, I was going to say, if you're going to be in my email system for a year and a half, I hope you're answering my emails too at that point. Gosh, right?
Doing my work for me, right?
Well, also, I haven't really thought at that point. I haven't really thought about that in probably a year, Brian. But we had several people come to us hacked about a year ago. It was just, I guess, spring of last year, and every one of them showed that evidence of, one, the bad guys being in there for a while, and two, a lot of stuff that they hadn't done yet. And so it makes me wonder if it's more common, maybe not now, but I feel like it's been more common that there's an overabundance of places where they have access that they haven't got around to handling or something. It's made me wonder that. So,
yeah. All right, cool. So Andre, you just laid out, the government or regulation enforcement side of the ransomware story. And that's what happens after you get hit and it turns out you weren't prepared, right? So start with those risk assessments. Like we said, it's pretty simple, right? It's a simple strategy. It's simple advice. Now all you got to do is do it, right? Randy, your story is going to take us on the attack side, and the scale of what he's about to describe is genuinely staggering. So Randy, take it away.
Yeah. So we're talking about today this group. This company called Instructure. They own a product called Canvas. Canvas is used in schools all over the country. Most likely, if you have a student or know a student anywhere in the US, they've been using Canvas. And this particular breach, which is being attributed to the ShinyHunters, which I'll mention them again in a minute. We talk about them. We've been talking about them a lot lately. I think we had a whole article on several things they did just last week on our podcast. But this particular breach, it looks like it's the second time that they've been inside this organization, which is a little crazy. But we also know statistically, an organization that gets a ransomware has like an 80% chance of getting ransomware again within a year. And this is an example, it appears, of that happening again. The bad guys were able to get the records of 275 million people, probably mostly students. The data includes school email addresses, student ID numbers, and private messages between students and teachers. And like shockingly crazy or whatever, Instructure comes out and says no passwords, no social security numbers, no financial information was leaked, but don't let that distract you from the fact that they have over 3.5 terabytes of data, 15,000 institutions, not just in the US, but also Europe and Asia, and the records of 275 million, mostly students, but people that are involved with this Canvas product. So basically that data could be used in all kinds of phishing attacks, targeted attacks, or something like that. They say also, shocker, that they got into the company's Salesforce environment, which is what they did apparently back in September. So now we've got either two entries into Salesforce or an 8-month-long pwn, if you will, of this company. It appears to be two separate attacks. But obviously, ShinyHunters either A, they figured out how to get in the first time, and that still worked the second time, or they had a backdoor, or they were just like, you know what? These guys didn't have a whole bunch of stuff. Let's just go through the front door like we normally do, and act like we need a password reset or something like that. But this is a case of an attack that's really bad for this organization because it comes so close to another one that they had, same company, same bad guys. And I'll wrap it up with this: parents, teachers, we really need to be making sure that our credit reporting agencies, that we're locked down with those. Basically, it's frozen, so people can't open up attacks. You got to really be on the watch out for stuff that looks, hey, like it's coming from the school. It's going to have the student ID. It's going to have, could have a lot of stuff. They could use AI to do a lot of stuff. And then also for business owners, there's a lot of companies out there that use Canvas for training, onboarding, employee development. So if you have it in your business, your employees are now going to be phishing targets. So that's kind of the gist of it. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this.
So this is 275 million users, right?
275 million records. Yes.
Records. Okay. Records.
It could be
Okay.
users,
Yeah.
it could be students, it could be administrators. But
So that tells me, I mean, I'm sure, like, the article is talking about how they're international company, and my son who goes to college, I've seen him use this platform.
Yep.
But that tells me that they have a bigger problem, which is data retention. It's like they don't know how long to keep the data, because little Johnny could be going to school for 2 years at a community college, 4 years at university. And it's like, at what point do you just like say, okay, you know what, after 5 years, hopefully you finish school, and we're going to go ahead and just purge the data? Because had they have some type of, policy and set, I'm sure this number would have been much smaller. And then also another thing this article was talking about is how even the messages between, the students and teachers, and who knows what those conversations are. And, we can't go have a podcast without talking about AI. And we know the bad guys are going to dump all this in and say, give me the juicy information of things I can use against the student, against the teacher, for phishing emails or whatever like that. So it's only a matter of time till they also use this data to now go after, the students and teachers and whoever else is on this platform.
Yep.
You guys got me? Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Had a little mic issue there. So, no unbreakable encryption. Didn't find a secret vulnerability 0 day that nobody's seen before. They just exploited a misconfigured Salesforce instance. And someone at the company that they basically paid to do it, however you look at it, Instructure, set it up wrong. And then nobody was monitoring it closely enough to catch it before some stranger came along and stole almost 4 terabytes. That's a lot of data, and it's not a sophisticated nation state attack. It's just somebody who figured out, oh, here's a configuration error that now I can do something bad with, right? So, the sad part is ShinyHunters now has billions of private messages between students and teachers, right? So think about what lives in those messages, right? Mental health conversations, among other things. I mean, think about all the things we see going on between kids and students today. And then you just have the basic stuff that goes on in schools, like learning disabilities, disciplinary conversations, right? Kids disclosing things to teachers that they may not have told their parents yet, or things that are going on in their house that maybe they don't want their parents to know they're telling other people about, right? So, who knows what gets published and then what these criminals do with it, because we've seen criminals do all kinds of crazy stuff when they have this information, right? So stay tuned, I guess, is the answer there. And, we'll keep you posted as we learn more. But you have to be fully prepared for what's about to, or potentially what could happen here in the days and coming weeks with this group. Go ahead.
And well, I just wanted to add to that. So according to the website that ShinyHunters has, where they leak these things and say what they have, that the way it's worded is they got into their main systems. Oh, and by the way, we got into Salesforce again. That's the way it's worded. It could be that they got all of this out of Salesforce. Right. It sounds like, from the way it's worded, that they got into their systems, and while they were there, they got into Salesforce again, because the past one they had was just Salesforce. And then I would say, if you're an organization out there and you have any kind of on-premises Salesforce, you need to do an audit on it. And maybe your IT team is afraid to upgrade it because it always breaks. Maybe it's not upgradable. Maybe MFA is not turned on. Maybe people complain because there was MFA. Maybe MFA is not available. I don't know, but you got to do an audit, because every single one of these ding dang attacks it almost involves Salesforce. So, and it's usually the on-premises version or the hosted version as opposed to the SaaS version. So,
yep. So ShinyHunters has a deadline of May 6th, right? So, and it's interesting as you were talking, I'm thinking it sounds like we got the US versus Iran here, right? What's true, right? Who has what? Who has what data? Where'd they get it from, right? Oh, they only got into Salesforce. No, we got into the whole thing. We just also got into Salesforce as well. Who really knows, right? Both sides are going to not really be, disclosing, right? Because the organization that got hacked, either they know and they're not going to tell, or they just don't have the telemetry, or they don't have the knowledge to know what they really got into, right? So time will tell, right? And Randy, this is the same group who got Ticketmaster, AT&T. So this group just
Google.
Go ahead. Who?
Google,
right? But the amount of records that this organization has taken over the years is just staggering. You're talking billions of records at this point, right? All because of misconfigured cloud infrastructure. This organization doesn't hack. Like they find weak passwords, things that are exposed that shouldn't be, and they're not going through your firewall and doing some crazy stuff, right? They're just targeting cloud services that you leave hanging out there flapping in the wind.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep. And on the opposite side, do you guys, I don't know if, Brian, your kids use iReady?
No, I don't know.
No. Okay. You haven't heard that one?
No.
Okay. Because they're a big tablet learning based software, and they just they're getting lawsuits because apparently they were selling the data, the students' data, the patterns and all of that to third parties without disclosing it. So our school just canceled the contract.
I just assume that's happening in every school. I just from what I'm hearing, like everybody's selling that data. It appears. So parents beware. Go to your school boards and tell them you don't want it, because it sounds like it's a revenue stream for some of these districts. And what I'm talking about is they're selling your children's behavior of what they're doing on their Chromebooks and stuff in the schools, and they're selling that to companies, and God knows what they're going to do with that down the road. So,
All
right. So Randy showed us that a breach that happened because of a SaaS platform being misconfigured and nobody watching is a big problem for a lot of organizations. And, ShinyHunters is one cyber criminal group that could be coming to get you if you don't pay attention to this stuff, right? And, not for nothing, guys, like in the days of AI, like it's too easy now to find misconfigurations. Like, if you know what you're doing with AI, or have a company that knows what they're doing with AI come in and help you, right? When you used to have humans figure this stuff out, a little bit more of a challenge. I don't know. I don't really see an excuse anymore with AI. You should be able to find your misconfigurations pretty quickly. So,
well, the excuse is they don't want to spend the money.
Could be. Who knows? So, all right, guys, let's get into my story here. And this was actually something that was predicted publicly about 5 years ago, and it pretty much played out exactly as predicted. So this organization, it's actually called Total System Services, TSYS, is one of the largest payment processors in the U.S., guys. I've never heard of them until this story, but they're a subsidiary of Global Payments, Inc. I've heard of them. And they provide credit and debit card processing, merchant services, and payment management to banks, financial institutions, and businesses all over the world. So essentially, if you've ever swiped a card at a business, there's a reasonable chance that this company, TSYS, touched that transaction somewhere in the chain. So in December of 2020, TSYS was hit by the Conti ransomware gang, and Conti attacked the legacy Cayenne business, a payment company TSYS had acquired for over $1 billion in 2018. And And what Conti did was different from ransomware attacks before it. Instead of just encrypting files and demanding payment, they posted samples of the stolen data online as leverage. So that was the first time we started to see
massive cyber assault hits U.S. payment giant.
Sorry about that.
Hey, you recording me with your AI?
What she said?
No, dude.
It was clicking on the link for the article, and it started talking really loud. I'm not sure why.
Is that your Mac?
Yeah, it's my Mac. That's
Yeah,
right.
you
If I
awesome,
only had a
man.
Windows.
Sounds awesome. Anyway, as I was saying, this is the first time we saw dark web stuff being posted with this Conti ransomware group and what they did in this event where TSYS got hit before. And this is where the first time we saw pay us or your data goes public. And it was a new tactic in 2020. So fast forward to 2026, here we are, and it's pretty common. Digital transactions ran a piece right after the attack, the headline, how the ransomware attack on TSYS could be an early indicator of bad news to come, right? So Julia Conroy from AI Group in this article said on record that more attacks on credit and debit card processors are absolutely coming. And this group got hit, the same company got hit again, who they were talking about in this article. So the second hit came on May 2nd, 2026, about 3 days ago. The Everest ransomware group, same group I talked about last week, claimed responsibility for the attack on TSYS. They encrypted systems, they exfiltrated data, and the same threat: contact us or the full leak goes public. 5 years after they got hit by Conti. Different group, same playbook, and that prediction in that article came true, guys. And the same time frame, Everest also claimed an attack on Fiserv, another major U.S. payment processor owned by Fidelity Investments. Two of the largest payment processors in the country, guys. Nobody's hearing about this stuff. Same ransomware group, same window. Do we think that's a coordinated attack targeting these payment processors, or is it just happenstance?
Well, no coincidence on this, man. Yep. It's going back to accountability. Whatever happened in 2020 was someone just checkboxing and saying, "Oh yeah, we got this, quote unquote, antivirus EDR company. They're coming in. They're doing everything. The death settles, lawsuits paid out, and then they just go back to the same thing." And that goes back to culture. That goes back to how serious the boardroom is taking these type of things. I don't think this is a coincidence. I think in 2020, they just, swept it under the rug and didn't fully take it seriously to make sure that it didn't happen again. It's like the news cycle, right? Something happens. It's, everybody's talking about it. Then the next thing happens. Nobody remembers before. And I'm sure it was just like this for this company when it happened.
And I do. We see this all the time, even in the regular business world. You tell companies have a vertical, or a few verticals or something like that, so you can really get good at providing service. Well, it does seem like, Brian, they found a vertical, because this is the same group that is supposedly linked to the Frost Bank and Citizens Bank attack from last week. It might have been the week before last, but we literally talked about it on last week's show when we mentioned those two banks. So we've got Everest involved in those two banks. We've got Everest involved in this TSYS organization. They probably found some kind of vulnerability or something like that they're exploiting, and now they're moving laterally from organization to organization, exploiting that vulnerability. That's my guess.
It doesn't really matter, because all three of these attacks that we talked about today succeeded because something that was known, documented, and preventable wasn't never fixed, right? That's the common thread through all these stories that we're seeing, right? And that's what we've been talking about on this show for 5 years, playing out in real time, that businesses are so far behind where the cyber criminals are. This is how it plays out in real time, right? Things that should be fixed, things that should be patched are not, right? And you're just getting hit. So we don't need sophisticated attackers to hurt businesses and organizations in the United States, around the world anymore. Organizations have received clear warnings for years now, and they're not acting with urgency. And urgency only exists to companies who've been breached, and maybe even not, right? Because we see this company, TSYS, I mean, they're huge. They acquire other companies. So if you really look at the situation, that company didn't get hit twice, but because they buy so many other companies, they did, right? But somewhere along the way, as you're buying companies, acquiring companies, I see this all the time, you lose that knowledge, you lose that talent, right? So 4 years ago, the people that were there, the lessons learned, the people who can say, hey, oh, we got to take care of that because that's how we got hit before. If they're no longer there, they've moved on to other companies or other jobs. And now you got all the new people in there. That's why these things tend to repeat themselves in big companies like this when they, acquire and move pieces of their businesses around a lot like this company does. So those are risks that you have to understand if your business is very dynamic like that, where you have all these entities and you're acquiring companies and you're, as you bring those pieces in and out, you have to, not only absorb them and make them part of your cybersecurity culture, but you also have to evaluate them from a risk standpoint. They could already be breached and you're bringing them in. So these are things that we see all the time as well, right? So when you see acquisitions happen, that's when cyber criminals usually rear their ugly head, right? So my point in saying all that is like cybersecurity being a budget line item, right? Before the breach, and then after the breach is when people start talking about it, right? So, and that can fade, right? Over time, over 4 years, we've seen it with this company that urgency can fade, and we have to pay attention to that, and we have to be aware of it because it can happen, and that's how companies get hacked again. So, you're never going to get a warning with this stuff. The warnings are everywhere. The warnings are this show, right? The question is whether you're going to act on it before your company or you become the story. And we're talking about you on this podcast. So, any last thoughts, guys, before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I was curious to do some more research on Everest ransom, and 15 hours ago, they just listed Liberty Mutual as one of their new clients, and they just claimed,
clients.
Yeah, or patients, depending on how you want to look at it. They claimed 108 gigabytes data theft, according to this article.
That's a big one. It could be one office. I got a Liberty Mutual in my building. They got pretty sizable piece of the floor. Could be one office like that, or could be Liberty Mutual has offices all over the country. You know what I'm saying? Like, so they could have got an office or they could have gotten headquarters. Who knows? But same time, you're talking about insurance and financial information, right? So never good.
Yep.
Randy, any last thoughts before I wrap it up?
Nope.
All right, buddy. Let's bring it home. Today we jumped into 3 stories. As I mentioned, they all kind of pointed to the same place. Andre brought us a topic around healthcare organizations getting hit by ransomware, paying the attackers, and never doing the risk analysis. And the result of that was HIPAA violation, not only ransomware, but HIPAA violations and all kinds of stuff, right? And now we're hearing that the government, OCR investigations, 19 of them, I think things are starting to ramp up there. And I think our government's starting to realize that, hey, companies are not doing the right thing. And hey, we can make some money off of this while we're, holding these companies accountable for not doing the right thing. And we're starting to see that all over the place. Government holding businesses accountable for cybersecurity all over. So be forewarned that it's probably coming, and it's coming fast. And we've been warning about it for years, but it really is coming now. Like all the different regulations, all the different enforcement that's coming behind it. It's really going to be hard to hide here in the next 3 to 5 years. So Randy, you showed us what happens when misconfigured cloud services allow cyber criminals to hand over about 4 terabytes of data, 275 million records from 9,000 schools, including billions of private messages from students and teachers. And the deadline's ticking. I'm sure we'll follow up in a future episode with what happens with that. And I brought to the table a warning that was delivered in 2020 that proved to be correct and validated 3 days ago when TSYS got hit by Everest ransomware. Common thread here, the attacks that are doing the most damage right now are not outsmarting anyone. They're walking through the doors that were left open. Cyber criminals are winning because the organizations they're hitting received a clear warning and didn't act fast enough. So the security conversation in most businesses is still very reactive. Businesses that don't end up in one of these stories and on this podcast are the ones that made the decision to treat security as a permanent operational discipline and not an emergency response. And that decision is a leadership decision. It doesn't live with IT. It lives with the executive team. So kudos to you if your organization plays this game the right way. So that's the show for this week. Thank you to Randy and Andre for bringing it today. We'll see you all next week. You can support the show over at buymeacoffee.com/security squawk. We'll see everyone next week. Stay safe, stay secure.
Bye, everybody.